What happens when the person responsible for USA basketball selections gets caught lying about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever fans on her own podcast? Sue Bird thought she could get away with mischaracterizing Clark's fanbase as toxic while cameras were rolling. She nodded along as guests attacked millions of new WNBA fans, then doubled down defending those comments. But Bird made one critical mistake. She forgot that everything was being recorded. Now we have video evidence of potential bias from someone who's supposed to remain neutral in national team decisions. The question isn't whether Bird crossed the line, it's how long this has been happening. Do you trust?
For a large group of people, mostly that exist online, it wasn't enough, love a player, love Caitlin, love whoever you want to love. But it was simultaneously, they had to then say that every player that ever came before was trash.
No. That is not correct. That's not a thing.
One player to hyperfixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And they passionately love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league. Then Katie Nolan shifted the discussion toward Caitlin Clark's fan base. Nolan started characterizing Clark's supporters as problematic, suggesting they were disrespectful to WNBA history.
During the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like maybe they're there for a weird reason. And now they've found sort of maybe one player to hyperfixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And they passionately love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league.
Any longer and jumped into the conversation. She stated, for a large group of people, mostly that exist online, it wasn't enough. Like, love a player, love Caitlin, love whoever you want to love. But it was simultaneously, they had to then say that every player that ever came before was trash. Bird was now actively participating in tearing down millions of new WNBA fans who had brought unprecedented attention to the league. And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket.
And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket. And you being here is also helpful to the sport. And that's a really difficult thing to do. They had no sort of reverence for the fact that, like, buddy, this conversation's been going on without you for years and years and years. And now you come in here and just think that you can, because you love this one player, and this one player is very good. She's very, very good. And like, I would love to just openly love them. Those are the types of moments that as a women's sports fan, I like really bristle against, where I'm just like, I hate that we have to go through this.
Role. She serves as USA Basketball's managing director, a position that requires neutrality when evaluating players for national team selection. Yet here she was, on camera, openly criticizing the fan base of the player who single-handedly saved the WNBA from obscurity. Bird's body language throughout the segment reveals someone who has been waiting for this opportunity. She leans forward when making her points about Clark's fans. Her hand gestures become more animated as she describes them negatively. These weren't off-the-cuff remarks. Bird had clearly been thinking about this for a while. The podcast becomes undeniable proof that Bird harbors resentment toward Clark's success. Every nod, every smile, every word of agreement shows someone who views the league's biggest breakthrough as a personal threat. Bird thought she could express these feelings safely among like-minded hosts, but the cameras captured every moment of bias from someone who's supposed to remain impartial when making decisions about Clark's international basketball future. I truly did not love that conversation. I don't know what that conversation adds to women's basketball, to the growth of women's basketball. I don't know
what that conversation adds to women's basketball, to the growth of women's basketball. I don't know why we're still bringing up a toxic fan base. I thought it was so condescending to say that so many fans are just latching on to Caitlin Clark for reasons other than the basketball. And that is something that we just continue to see. And it was also crazy because Katie Nolan at the end of this whole bit, she was like, yeah, I don't really watch that many games, but I'm keeping tabs on it. And it's like, that's the reason you had the take that you did. The reason that you had the the take that you did is because you're not watching the games. You're not watching what's going on. You're not going to the games. And you clearly said that. You said, I'm a casual fan. I don't really watch the games, but I keep tabs on what's
I don't really watch the games, but I keep tabs on what's going on. Bird's sudden hostility toward Clark starts making sense when you dig into her college basketball roots. She graduated from UConn in 2002 after winning 2 national championships there. That connection runs deeper than just wearing the same jersey. It shaped how Bird sees the game and which players deserve recognition. The same podcast where Bird attacked Clark's fans also featured her passionate defense of Paige Bueckers. Bird went out of her way to argue that Bueckers deserved far more media attention than she was getting. Her tone completely changed when talking about the UConn star. Gone was the criticism and skepticism she showed toward Clark supporters. Instead, Bird spoke about Bueckers with genuine enthusiasm and protective energy. Why isn't Paige probably what people are thinking is why isn't she as popular as Caitlin? But do you think Paige should be more popular and Paige deserves more and Angel Reese deserves more? And Asia and Fee and yeah, I think specific to Paige, you might argue her popularity and the people that are fans of her has been underrated, which shocks me. Bird specifically claimed that Bueckers only receives about 16% of the media coverage compared to Clark. She presented this statistic like it represented some grave injustice that needed immediate correction. Her voice carried real frustration as she made this point, suggesting she had been thinking about this perceived
Paige, probably what people think is, why isn't she as popular as Caitlin? But do you think Paige should be more popular? And Paige deserves more, and Angel Reese deserves more, and Asia, and Fee, and. Yeah. I think specific to Paige, you might argue her popularity and the people that are fans of her has been underrated, which shocked
and drew millions of new eyes to the sport. Bird's logic crumbles when you examine what she's actually saying. She's arguing that the player who single-handedly saved the WNBA from irrelevance somehow gets too much credit. Meanwhile, she wants the media to artificially inflate coverage of Bueckers to match Clark's organically earned popularity. This isn't about fairness. It's about Bird using her massive platform to boost players from her old school while diminishing Clark's achievements. I can't believe that we're still doing this. Really, there's this seeming desire to be able to wish or will other players into Caitlin Clark's level of popularity, and that is not something you can just make happen. You can't say it and make it the case. The UConn loyalty extends beyond just sentiment. Bird now holds significant power as USA Basketball's managing director, giving her direct influence over national team roster decisions. She's essentially using that position to publicly campaign for players from her alma mater, while simultaneously undermining the league's biggest star. Bird suggests that media outlets should redistribute their coverage to give Bueckers more attention. She never acknowledges that Clark drew that coverage by delivering performances that captivated audiences nationwide. Bird treats media attention like it should be divided equally, rather than earned through exceptional play and fan engagement. The conflict of interest becomes impossible to ignore. The person responsible for evaluating players for Team USA is publicly advocating against the player who brought more attention to women's basketball than anyone in recent memory. Bird's UConn bias isn't just showing, it's driving her decision-making process in ways that could affect Clark's international career opportunities. Bird's comments reveal someone who views Clark's success as a threat to the UConn basketball legacy, rather than a positive development for women's sports overall. And I think people forgot how popular and how engaging Paige is, and how people are drawn to her. She should be followed and covered in a way that is similar to what we saw with Caitlin, because that's how popular she is. It's not to compare them, and it's not to diminish Caitlin. That's not what it's about. It's just about talking about Paige. I think it was undervalued, underrated. Bird painted Clark's supporters as toxic and harmful to women's basketball, but the actual numbers tell a completely different story about who these fans really are and what they've done for the sport. The data doesn't just contradict Bird's claims, it destroys them entirely. WNBA attendance jumped almost double during Clark's rookie season. Fever games that used to draw maybe 5,000 fans suddenly sold out arenas with over 17,000 seats filled. These weren't angry trolls showing up to cause problems. These were families with young daughters wearing Clark jerseys, cheering for every three-pointer and learning the names of her teammates like Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hall, Sophie Cunningham, and Aaliyah Boston. Great stars on their own that were magnified because of Clark. Television viewership tells an even more dramatic story. Clark's games averaged over 1 million viewers throughout her rookie season. Compare that to typical WNBA games that struggle to reach 200,000 viewers on most nights. Bird calls these new fans hateful, but the merchandise sales show families buying Clark jerseys for their daughters at rates the league had never seen before. Person who was like, all this stuff was happening before any of you got here, and it's like, okay, and it was millions of less people. It was millions of less people talking about the WNBA before the new fans got here. So to single out once again, like I said, in 2025, to target a group of fans felt like was very condescending. Social media exploded with young girls posting videos of themselves practicing Clark's signature shots from beyond the arc. Parents shared clips of their kids dribbling basketballs in driveways while wearing number 22 Fever jerseys. Birds somehow sees this grassroots enthusiasm as a threat to the sport, rather than its greatest blessing in decades. The demographics at Fever games completely contradict Bird's characterization of Clark supporters as ignorant troublemakers. You see multi-generational families attending games together, grandmothers bringing their granddaughters to witness Clark play live, young boys asking their parents about other WNBA teams and players after watching Clark dominate on the court. Clark brought more money to the WNBA in one season than most players generate in entire careers. Ticket sales, merchandise revenue, television contracts, and sponsorship deals all increased dramatically because of the attention Clark attracted to women's basketball. Bird treats this economic windfall like some kind of problem that needs solving. It's this weird thing in the WNBA space, and specifically in WNBA media. It's like you can trash Caitlin Clark as much as you want to, and you can't even push back on it. You can say whatever you want about her, you can say whatever you want about her fans, but you can't push back because oh, they're right. There is a small section of fans who aren't really that great. Bird claims Clark's fans don't respect basketball history, but surveys show most new viewers actively research other players and teams after discovering the league through Clark. They're learning about legends like Diana Taurasi and current stars like A'ja Wilson. They're expanding their knowledge rather than dismissing the past. The real issue becomes clear when you examine what Bird actually accomplished versus what Clark has already achieved. Bird never brought this level of mainstream attention to women's basketball during her entire career. She never filled arenas consistently or drew millions of television viewers to regular season games. She never inspired young girls across the country to pick up basketballs and dream of playing professionally. Every single metric proves Bird is lying about Clark's impact on the sport. Attendance, viewership, merchandise sales, social media engagement, and economic growth all reached unprecedented levels because of Clark's arrival in the WNBA. Bird's podcast comments look exactly like what they are: jealousy disguised as concern for the sport's well-being. Sports fans are allowed to want to consume any particular player and/or team and/or franchise and/or league that they want to.
Okay, now what's hilarious is in all sports fandoms, you've got fans out there that think Josh Allen and Tom Brady are trash. Those fans exist, right? Here's the thing. Nobody thought the players that came before them were trash. No fans came into this league and thought that. Bird's podcast comments create a massive problem for Clark's future with Team USA.
As managing director of USA Basketball, Bird now holds direct influence over roster decisions for the 2026 FIA Women's World Cup and the 2028 Summer Olympics. Clark's path to representing her country runs straight through someone who just went on record attacking her fan base as toxic and problematic. The timing makes Bird's bias even more concerning. Major international competitions are approaching, and roster decisions will happen within the next 2 years. Bird's comments weren't made in some distant past when she held no power over Clark's career. These attacks happened while Bird actively serves in a position that could determine whether Clark ever wears a USA Basketball jersey again. Bird's influence extends beyond just her own vote. Other USA Basketball officials watch what their managing director says and does. They see Bird criticizing Clark's supporters and defending UConn players like Paige Beakers. These officials might start questioning whether selecting Clark brings unwanted controversy, especially when their boss has made her feelings clear. And to go out there, you're the what, managing director or something of USA Basketball? It is frightening to me that you are going to make decisions potentially about who's representing our country in Team USA, all because you don't like the fact that we don't want to consume your agenda. Clark's teammates are witnessing this institutional attack firsthand. Lexi Hall, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell see their star player getting targeted by basketball leadership for bringing success to their franchise. They watch Bird tear down the fan base that fills their arena and generates revenue that increases everyone's salary. The message becomes clear: success in the WNBA can make you enemies in high places. The 2026 season takes on added importance for Indiana because of this bias. Clark needs to prove that Bird's resentment won't define her career trajectory. The Fever must show that Clark's impact goes beyond just drawing fans and selling tickets. They need championships and individual accolades that become impossible for USA Basketball to ignore. Bird's betrayal sends a warning to every rising star in women's basketball. Breakthrough success comes with consequences from the old guard who feel threatened by change. Young players see that bringing millions of new fans to the sport can make you a target rather than a hero among basketball leadership. Do you know how many NBA fans only watched Michael Jordan, only watched Magic Johnson, only watched Larry Bird? That was a thing. Even when I was a huge NBA fan, do you think I was going out of my way to watch Sacramento Kings games? USA Basketball's credibility suffers when fans lose trust in the selection process. Millions of Clark supporters now question whether roster decisions reflect merit or personal grudges. They see Bird's bias on full display and wonder how that affects which players represent America on the international stage. Clark faces a choice about how to handle this institutional bias. She can let Bird's resentment derail her international career, or she can use these attacks as motivation to become so dominant that leaving her off Team USA becomes impossible. Her response will determine whether she reaches her full potential on basketball's biggest stages. The real damage extends beyond just Clark's career. Young players across America watched Bird attack the person who made women's basketball matter to mainstream audiences. They see that excellence can make you enemies among the sports leadership, potentially discouraging the next generation from pursuing greatness in women's basketball. They continue to want to tell fans how to be fans, and I gotta be honest, at this point, you're not going to convince me there's not an anti-Caitlin Clark bias going on with people like Sue Bird now. Sorry, Sue Bird. Congratulations. You just put yourself in there, and now nobody's going to trust you. Sue Bird's podcast appearance stripped away any pretense about how the old guard views Clark's meteoric rise. Bird revealed that bringing millions of fans to women's basketball somehow makes you a problem rather than a savior. Her attacks weren't accidental slips during casual conversation. They were calculated comments from someone who sees Clark's success as a direct threat to the established order. Bird crossed every line by attacking Clark while holding a USA Basketball leadership position. She destroyed her own credibility as an impartial evaluator. Now Clark must decide whether she'll let this institutional bias define her limits or use it as fuel to reach heights that make excluding her impossible. Do you trust Sue Bird when it comes to Team USA?
Let us know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen and we will see you in the next.